Hey everybody, it's Adam here with my buddy Sitch, and we're going to do a recorded video. I saw this video of Konstantin Kisin talking to John Anderson on John Anderson's channel. He does interviews with various personalities. Konstantin Kisin has been doing a bunch of interviews with interesting people on YouTube. I even reached out to him. Maybe he'll talk to us, but I thought this particular section was kind of interesting because they talk about something that I think is a problem, and I think, Sitch, you agree is a problem, declining birth rates and the economic conditions that are causing this kind of thing. And then they roll into the next segment, and some of the policies they pitch, I think, are actually contributing to the declining birth rates. It seems to be kind of a contradiction. If you want to raise the birth rates, you have to increase people's economic conditions, but then they pitch typical, often Republican policies that I think are really bad for that goal. You know, obviously we have a lot of conservatives in our audience, and I'm trying to kind of bring these issues to their attention and kind of forcing them to figure out which is the more top priority, right? So I thought it'd be interesting to talk about. You haven't watched this, right?
I have seen it, yes.
Oh, you have? Okay.
Well,
So
not the
do
whole
you?
thing, but I saw the part that we're going to talk about. I'm
Okay.
responsible. I do
Okay,
my
cool.
homework.
Well, you're better than me then. Sometimes I'm seeing it fresh, but it'll be interesting to get your feedback on it
Okay.
anyway. So,
Right.
so let's jump into it. What do you think?
Check it out.
You said that you can't ask young people to believe in democratic capitalism if it's not working for them. I think there's a lot of truth in that. I've tried to say it in other ways as well. That you can understand why a lot of young people in the West are a bit disillusioned. The trouble is that they're looking in all the wrong places, I think, for the answers. But what did you mean by that?
Well, I was asked at an event here in Australia, in Melbourne. Glenn from the CIS was interviewing me, and he said, you know, the numbers are that, 20% of Australians don't think democracy is a good idea. 30. You gave me all these numbers, and I was amazed that it was that low.
I think that's conservative. I've heard much higher figures.
Right. So for young people in particular, if you think about the deal that I think about in our societies, the deal is that if you work hard and you are talented and determined and driven, and if you do all the right things, then you will be able to do the things that human beings have always wanted to do, which is start a family, have your own place, raise your children, and be comfortable, effectively. That's what the average person, I think, seeks. That's what we all seek. Now, the best way to do that is how does a normal person save money? Well, for most people, the ability to put away thousands of pounds every month is just not on the table. Most people are, it's very difficult, even on a two-person household salary, to actually be able to save any money. The only way that you really can is you buy a property, you pay off the mortgage, and then you've got an asset. Well, that is increasingly unavailable to people both in this country and in the UK, and increasingly even in America. And what does that mean? Well, it means that you've got young people living 4 to a shared apartment, unable to, who's going to, I hear a lot of...
I just want to jump in because I actually think this is part of the problem. This economic model that we have, that you're going to buy a house and that house is going to appreciate in value, and that's going to be your retirement, is part of the problem, because it creates this cycle where the younger generation can't get into the housing market because the houses are all somebody's retirement and they're completely overpriced. So I kind of think we need to work on that model as well.
No, that's a really good point. And that, because especially if you're talking about like having more kids and starting families, obviously it's much more difficult to start a family, to have kids if you're, living at home, if you're living in a small apartment somewhere, as opposed to just having your own house and property. And I mean, this is partially why property values just keep rising and rising and rising. And a lot of the younger generation have been, had difficulties, owning a home and have been priced out.
Yeah, because the housing market has become older folks' retirement. It's like we need to decouple those markets. We need to get housing to be cheaper and find another way to solve people's retirement problem. Yeah.
Yes.
conservatives sometimes talking about, oh, the need, look at our birth rate. We've got to encourage people to have children. And I agree. We've absolutely got to encourage people to have children, not only because of some abstract birth rate, but it's also because it changes how you think, as you well know, and it gives you a stake in your own society.
The antidote to selfishness, bringing a little one into the world.
The antidote to not only to selfishness, but also to nihilism. It gives you a purpose and a reason to think that the future of your society matters, because it's not you that's going to be living in it.
See, I 1000% agree here. This is good advice right here.
It's this beautiful creature that is completely helpless and powerless that you've brought into the world, that you are responsible for. Now, if we agree that that is essential and it's essential that people are able to do that if they so choose, we have created the conditions that have made it as difficult as possible for people to do that. And
I agree here too. It's like, if we want these basic things, and I do think conservatives do want these basic things, why does it have to be so difficult to carve that out?
Well, I think the difficulty is that for probably the majority of human history, it was never really difficult to get people to have kids.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point.
And so this is a completely unique, I'm sure there have been time periods where there are like things that have happened, but for the most part, it's a mostly unique, rare occurrence that is widespread and global that we've never as a species really had to deal with, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. Birth control came into play too.
Right. Because if you look at most of our cultural ideas that have been passed on, you should get married, you shouldn't have sex before you get married, the ideas of religion, that you should be faithful and chaste and all these things. Like all of our cultural mechanisms were basically designed to limit people from having sex.
Yeah.
Essentially. Now, I guess you could say obviously way back in the day, originally in religion, it was be fruitful and multiply. So there definitely was this, a big push that you should have a bunch of kids. But then that, for the last few hundred years, it definitely seems to have fallen to the wayside.
Yeah. Interesting point. Yeah. We've, now that you can have as much child-free sex as you want, people are like, I'll take the sex without the child, please. Yeah, that and the fact that now kids are an expense rather than something that gets you money via labor. They're now something that costs you money. Yeah. Well, he gets into this here and makes an argument we've made before on the show.
Right.
So, and we know that the figures, I think 80-something% of women say that they would have more children if they could, more than zero or more than they currently have. But they are being restricted from that. So the material circumstances of people's lives are not conducive to them believing that the way we've run things is good.
Look, I think there's a lot in what you're saying, but let's tackle one issue. You're talking about the need for more kids. A lot of young people think that's the world's problem. Too many people, it's threatening the planet. It's, you don't want to bring children into this mess. How does that fit?
But it's because...
I think a lot of that is the cope, though. I do think people want to have more kids, but they're just not financially able to do it. And a lot of this nihilism towards, we shouldn't bring kids into the world is post hoc rationalization for the fact that it's just not feasible for them to have kids comfortably.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think there's very few people that are in a situation where I would have kids, but I'm not going to, primarily because of climate change or something.
Right. Yeah. It's that they can't, they're not they don't have the financial ability to have kids. So
right. And so then they can justify themselves that they're doing something moral for something they couldn't do anyway.
Yeah. Which is sad. That is definitely super sad.
Because you've got cause and effect reversed. The reason young people are nihilistic is because they don't have a future. And when you don't have a future, then you become nihilistic and you start buying into all this climate catastrophe, disaster nonsense. And then you are sort of in that space. But I
don't agree with that, though. I think I don't think that kids are nihilistic and that's why they're, quote, buying into climate change. I definitely believe that the ideas about climate change, whether they're true or not true, definitely are helping push kids. I wouldn't say nihilistic because I don't think that's the correct word, are definitely pushing kids down a pathway of being pessimistic about their future.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's easy if you're halfway there over economic conditions. Like you're already pessimistic. You're like, look, I have a shit job. I'm never going to get a girlfriend. I'm never going to buy a house. Like I can't imagine being in that situation. But a lot of young people are literally in that situation, right? Like being forced, if you're 30 years old and you're still being forced to live at home with your parents, that's devastating for people. No wonder they're nihilistic.
Of course, right.
Yeah.
Polling shows that, as I said, young women want to have kids. They just don't have the ability to do so. So I think this nihilism comes from people's material circumstances.
And then he says specifically material circumstances, which was what I was looking for, right?
Yeah.
It's an economic issue.
And if we change their material circumstances, their entire experience will be different, and then they will say and think different things too.
Okay, so that's important, right? Look, we get these birth rates up. We just need to change their material circumstances, right?
Right.
Good jobs, cheap housing.
In many parts of the world, you've got a depopulation bomb going off right now.
Absolutely.
China being the leading example, but there are many other countries with it.
Including all Western countries.
Africa and the Middle East, the only country still expanding.
Yeah.
And in this country, I would suggest that very high levels of immigration. Our leaders are not being honest. They're not saying that one of the reasons is that Australian-born young people are not having enough children of their own.
So you bring in lots of immigrants, but there's no housing. So the young people who are here, whether they're of immigrant stock or not, don't have kids. So you have to bring in more immigrants, and it's a vicious cycle all the way down, unless you break the cycle by building enough houses and giving the people who are already here an opportunity to start a family and be able to afford to raise kids. Why don't we start there?
See, look, singing my song here, Konstantin, right? Build more houses.
Yes.
Why do we look at houses like rare works of art that only the rich can afford, right? Why aren't houses like cheeseburgers, something that anyone can afford, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Look, this is a production problem, right? And if you say, look, we don't have enough land, look, they have solved that problem in all kinds of cities, like build skyscrapers, right? Build housing in the skyscrapers, sell condominiums, right?
Well,
There's plenty of ways to fix this.
Right. Well, the answer to the question is because the largest number of people that vote want to keep their property values high.
Because it is their retirement, which is a huge part of the problem. Yeah, right. A huge part of the problem. You're pitting these two people, these two interest groups against one another, the homeowners and the home buyers, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and often that splits along generational lines.
Yep.
Yeah, it sucks, but that's the cycle we have to break.
You know, and by the way, you know, this is one of the reasons that I kind of talk on conservative leaning platforms about this, because, you know, conservatives tend to be older, towards the boomer generation, who, you know, boomers get a lot of criticisms, but on this issue, I have to say your generation has kind of pulled up the drawbridge a little bit.
Are you suggesting as a boomer I might have something to answer for?
Well, I think, look,
yes,
a lot of us spend a lot of
yes. Konstantin's too nice. He's not gonna say that.
time talking about how young people are naive and stupid and they believe this and they believe that, which is true. But we also got to look at what they're facing. We talked about the housing issue. They're also facing the fact that not only they, but probably now their grandchildren are going to be paying for the money that we've been spending on our quality of life. Less of a problem in Australia, but still a big problem. 55% debt to GDP ratio. In America, it's 100%, and likewise in the UK. We're doing crazy things. I mean, interest repayments in the UK on our national debt are one of the largest items of expenditure.
And then he just slips straight into the austerity message. Yeah. Look, how do we fix this? Well, look, if the private sector is not going to produce enough housing for the population growth, somebody has to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the problem is the private sector is not producing enough housing. Well, look, there is this collusion with the public sector as well, because the people who own the houses vote, and they vote for all these policies that restrict housing in their area because they know it's going to affect their home values, right? So there is kind of a collusion between the public and private sector not to build enough houses so housing is affordable for young people. But then, like, instead of focusing on what he's just said, like, you know, we need to build more houses, we need to figure out how to build those more houses, immediately he slips into, oh, we're spending too much money. We're spending too much money.
So you think that the concept of we need to build houses, but then also complain about government debt, these are like contradictory is what you're saying.
These are very contradictory.
Right.
And look, I think about this a lot. I think it's super interesting. I think the way to think about it is like resource management. Too many people have monetary thinking. They have money thinking. They're like, we're spending too much money, when the real question is, are we managing the resources we have efficiently? Like, if we have a bunch of unemployed people, that is a resource that is basically a free lunch uneaten. If those people are sitting at home collecting unemployment checks when they could be out building houses and lowering the cost of housing, that is an inefficient use of resources. And if the only thing preventing those people from getting up off their butts and building something is the fact that the government doesn't want to print more money, I mean, what do we want to leave to our grandchildren? He's specifically talking about how we're spending our grandchildren's future if we print money and pay people to build houses. Is that true, Sitch? Would you rather leave a full bank account of digital dollars to our grandchildren, or would you like to leave a larger housing stock? Which is more valuable?
Well, the housing stock obviously would be more valuable.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
what would you say to people that would say, well, why does the government have to print more money to build houses? Why can't people just build houses?
So look, if the private sector is willing to do it, if the government wants to give incentives to the private sector to build housing, maybe tax cuts or preferable interest rates, I'm fine with doing that. I'm fine with incentivizing the private sector to build those homes. What I'm saying is, like, the government should say, listen, if we want to stabilize housing costs where people feel secure enough that they can have children and, you know, sustain society over time, that is a metric that we should look at. And we shouldn't just throw up our hands and say, oh, look, it'll all work out in the end, right? This is why I do think that these two ideas are contradictory.
They can be. Yeah, I think where Konstantin's coming from, so his perspective, he's kind of just, the subject matter, I guess, that he's kind of focusing on here is how the older generation has basically screwed over the younger generation.
Right.
That's kind of how he's framing this. And so because, you know, he has the framing of debt, that's kind of the classical way to understand debt. That'd be another example of like, oh, you're saddling all these kids with debt, right? That's kind of the view that he's interpreting here in this segment. That's why he's saying what he's saying.
Well, the other side of the debt equation is the larger housing stock, which, I mean...
Well, the more government debt that exists, the more money exists in the economy for private businesses and people to use.
Yeah.
Essentially. Now, obviously, inflation still exists, so that could, you know, it could be of less value depending on how much money exists for how much resources exist. But
yeah, let's continue.
It's the fastest growing in Australia too, and we have
This is madness.
Yeah. You're being incredibly kind because I know how blunt you can be. In that, I detect the sort of, you Burmers have got a few things to ask for, and I agree with you. I've got to be really careful here because I know many of my listeners will say, come on, John, we've worked hard all our lives, stop this business.
You have.
Saying it's our fault.
Yeah.
My line is quite different. I'm not after that. I'm not, I believe in prosperity. I believe in people having a go and building a lifestyle. That's not the problem. I'm a mid-baby boomer. I'll tell you where I am highly critical of my own generation in two broad areas. The first is the one you touched on, debt. I was part of a reforming government. We got rid of debt. We left money in the bank. That's the best youth policy you can have.
They basically liquidated the money supply. So, yeah, austerity policy is not good. There's a great book it's Mark Blythe, right? Austerity, the Dangerous Idea.
Yeah.
Which, if Konstantin watches this, I'd encourage him to read that book. So I think his economic thinking is very good, very accurate for a business owner, for someone who, debt can destroy a business. Obviously, you're forced to pay that back. But in a government situation, the government debt is the private sector savings. So it's in order to pay off the debt, you have to liquidate the savings of the population, which is just not a smart idea.
Yeah.
You can carry the debt infinitely. The thing that you want to do is build up the real wealth of nations, which is the housing stock, the roads, the institutions. That's what's valuable, not the actual printed money or digital dollars in a bank account somewhere.
Do you think people will ever be able to sort of overcome this personal, classical way of understanding debt that, like they view government debt as personal debt as opposed to viewing them like in this completely differently?
I'm not sure that they will. And it kind of sucks because the Republicans are at a disadvantage in this, since they oftentimes come from the business sector. So they're just used to thinking about money and debt in business terms, which is just completely different than thinking about it from managing an economy, managing a money supply, managing fiscal policy. Yeah. So I don't know that there's much more to watch on here. Here we'll go a little bit further.
To avoid intergenerational theft, I'm staggered at what has happened in England. I don't know whether young Brits realise what a bomb they're being left. Your tax rates are high than they've ever been. They're climbing higher than ever.
See, this is the whole idea of intergenerational theft. I just think is a huge lark, because if you have the idea that deficit needs to be paid off, yes, you're going to be taxing those future people. But if you think of the economy as just a distribution system, the people who are alive are going to use the products and services produced by the people who are alive. We're not like shipping cars, from the future to the past. It's like as many resources as you have at your disposal is the resources that you're consuming, right? Things don't last forever. So the future generations are going to produce the things that they consume, just like past generations have produced the things that they consume. If you can produce more, like, the international highway system that we have was produced by previous generations, you're actually leaving those generations something of value. So the idea that we should not spend money, and so we leave money to our heirs, it's such faulty thinking. We should be using the resources that we have at our disposal now to produce the most tangible future goods for those future generations.
Right. We should be leaving stuff, not money.
Stuff, not money. Exactly. Right. And a larger housing stock would be something great to leave to future generations. Definitely. As stated by Konstantin earlier in this. And it would help those birth rates.
That's true. That's a great point.
So you got anything to add to this, or?
No, you said it well.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Hi. You just listened to a Sitch and Adam recorded video. That's right. We're still doing recorded videos. And we're even doing shorter daily live streams now, beginning at 2 p.m. Eastern, where we cover the top news stories of the day. Check it out. And you can super chat us, or you can join the channel. Subscribe to this channel right here to watch the live show or watch more of our awesome deep dive videos.